Okay, yeah, it looks like I have some backtracking to do. Hello friends, I'm DasFood, and normally my videos don't get much in the way of pushback. I make silly DBD videos for a small community of fans and friends, and things generally stay pretty peachy. Sure, I know there are corners of Twitch and Twitter where people don't seem to like me so much, but that's never bothered me. You can find corners of social media where anyone is disliked, so it's really not worth losing sleep over. While I would obviously prefer if people loved me, I don't mind if they hate me. Part of being a proper adult is understanding that not everyone's gonna like you, so I'm okay with that. Even still, I try to monitor the vibes of my channel pretty closely, because every now and then, things get a little wonky. So for context, my videos usually get a like to dislike ratio of like 95% or better. As of this video's time of recording, my nerfing time sits at 89% positive, which is still pretty good, but also serves as easily the lowest score on any of my DBD videos ever. And it's not hard to see why. To state it plainly, I was too rash with my criticisms of Wesker. Now, if you think this is going to be a video where I grovel and apologize for every hot take I've ever had, that's simply not how this is going to go. I stand by most of what I said in the video, especially regarding the other killers. Blight's add-ons are still, in my opinion, extremely busted. If I had a regret regarding the Blight, it's only that I singled out the Alchemist Ring and didn't include the other add-ons. Blighted Rat, Blighted Crow, Compound 33, and even the Adrenaline Vial are all extremely powerful and should probably get another look from the devs. Again, I don't regret criticizing Blight's add-ons in the slightest. He's a well-designed and fun killer that simply needs some add-on tuning, and that would make him a little more fair to go against. Obviously, this goes without saying, I stand by my nurse takes as well. She's busted, she's gross, and she needs a nerf. I've been on this for years, and I don't see that changing until she changes. Of course, my phrasing wasn't great, and what she really needs is a rework instead of an outright nerf, per se, but either would be greatly appreciated at this point, so kinda, no harm done there. All of that being said, Nurse is very, very fun to play as, and I'm not denying that. She's great from a killer's perspective, so I want to make sure that the people who think that I'm coming at this from a place of just pure spite know that I do enjoy playing as all of these killers, except maybe Blight. I don't love playing as Blight, but most of them I really enjoy playing as them. So it's not from a place of hatred for these killers, right? Keeping on with what I talked about in the previous video, I do still think that the Huntress and the Clown changes, I can take them or leave them. I still feel like Eerie Hatchet and Pinky Finger could use a change. I feel that way. But if the community at large is happy with where they are, that's fine by me. I don't face those add-ons enough to have a fiery opinion on them, and I'm a Clown main, so if it's something that keeps him stronger, so be it. If everybody's okay with it, so am I. When it comes to Myers, two things are true at once. My take still stands, and I still feel bad about it. Tombstone Piece is really powerful and often punishes not the survivor who fed Myers' power, but the unlucky person he finds right after being fed. I don't like that design and would like to see it changed, but as stated in the initial video, I believe that that change should come with corresponding buffs in other areas. Again, I feel like a jerk calling out Myers, but you do have to address poor design where you see it. Which brings us back to Wesker, without whom this second video wouldn't have even been necessary. Without whom, I hypothesize, this week's video wouldn't have struck a nerve with so many people. Wesker is debatably DBD's most popular killer, and if I'm going to catch criticism on this channel, it's almost always because I crossed the Wesker stands. I'm telling you, this guy has an army that rivals that of the Swifties in their sheer dedication, and to be fair, I do get it to some degree. He's fairly strong, he's got a unique look, and his power is extremely fun to use. Add to that the fact that he's got fun, goofy voice lines and benefits from being from a mega popular franchise, and suddenly it does make a lot of sense why so many people love Wesker like they do. And again, I'm one of the people who loves Wesker. I still don't really think he fits the aesthetic of DBD, but the game's current culture, it's constantly evolving, and I'm fine with accepting that not every change they make is going to appeal directly to me, right? It's just not going to happen. Overall, I enjoy Wesker as a character, I'm a huge Resident Evil nerd, and his power is one of my personal favorites to use in the game. Even still, I think the infection mechanic is a bit problematic in design. Several people insinuated in the comments on my last video that I was, quote, crying, and to that I have two replies. Firstly, me crying is literally impossible. I have lived long enough to watch all of my favorite franchises, or at least nearly all of them, turn to ash before my very eyes. Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Fallout, Mass Effect, Saints Row, every sports game in existence. Nearly every piece of media that I love has been ruined, and I am emotionally dead inside. So, no, I have no tears. They're a waste of good suffering anyway, if you ask certain people. Secondly, it feels important to point out that, jokes aside, I'm not mad at all. I play DBD for fun, and my life is way too fulfilling to get caught up in an us versus them of the whole survivor-killer war. If I see something I don't like from a balanced perspective, I'm going to address it whether it's for killers or survivors. And if I don't address it, it's likely because I don't feel like there's anything to be gained from giving my 2 cents on the matter. A good example would be the survivor perk made for this. I think it's gross, and I think it needs a nerf, but every content creator, Twitch user, and general DBD player seems to have voiced their displeasure with the perk. So, in this matter, I have nothing new to add, and I'm not going to make a video on it. Wesker's power, on the other hand, I rarely hear discussed. People talk about the reputation of Wesker mains, certainly, but I don't recall ever seeing a discussion of why Weskers have the reputation that they do. In my opinion, I think it comes down to 3 completely separate issues, only one of which was addressed in my video yesterday, which is why I think we need a follow-up. First and foremost, and I do mean foremost here, is that a very, very large number of people play Wesker. He's been the most played killer for about a year now, and even when a new killer knocks him off his perch, like Xeno has done lately, it's only a matter of time before he ascends again. With this large player base, people are much more likely to face hard tunneling masterminds than they are really any other killer. If you play 10 games in a given day, there is a very, 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 very good chance that at least, let's say, 3 of those games are going to be against Wesker. If even one of those Weskers then proceeds to tunnel you, it contributes to the bad reputation the character has overall. Compare that to lesser played killers like Hillbilly, Freddy, or Twins. How you feel about these killers is very likely based off of a very limited sample size because you just never see these killers for the most part, which is why opinions on them tend to vary so wildly. Side note, Twins are awesome, y'all are just mean. I really like this killer. I think if they had a better aesthetic, I've made a whole video on it. I'm not going to go into it again. So yes, Wesker's popularity influences the perception that he tunnels frequently, as does the second factor, which is his high tier status. I've heard people argue against this, but Mastermind is an undeniably strong killer. Not overpowered like Nerfs or Blight or, in my opinion, Spirit, mind you, but definitely strong. He has built-in slowdown that doubles as a means of gathering information, a great chase power, and a large tear radius that synergizes well with strong maps and strong perks. This guy is easily A tier, and as such, sweaty players are drawn to him like flies to manure. There's a misconception in the community that only bad killers camp and tunnel, but this is certifiably false. The most effective killers absolutely tunnel, and they do it frequently. In a 4v1 game, nothing is more useful than evening the odds early. I don't blame killers for tunneling either. It's not personally something I enjoy doing, but I can't fault it from a strategy perspective. If you know the other team can't defend against the 3-point shot, you're smart to go to the 3-point shot, right? It just makes sense. And circling back to Wesker, his mains love to tunnel. Part of that, I believe, is definitely that he's both popular and high tier, as we've discussed. This means that both low skill and high skill players are likely to play as him, skipping right over that gooey middle ground of solid players who don't take the game too seriously. Both of these factors lead to Wesker being prone to tunneling, but only one thing works to make him a tunneling machine, and that's what I mentioned in the last video. His infection mechanic pairs really, really well with his dash to make him one of the game's stronger tunnelers, though it does need to be said that I think Nerfs and Pyramid Head both come to mind as better tunnelers. Wesker will infect you during a chase. It's going to happen if he's even decent, right? It's just going to happen. Eventually, you will go down. That's fine, that's a natural part of the game. Where I start to have an issue is that when Wesker hooks you, you remain infected. Not only that, but the infection doesn't go down all the way. Because of this, Wesker has only to leave the hook just enough to allow for the save, dash back in once you're off the hook, and then chase you until the infection meter fills again and makes you an easy target. This strategy is brutally effective, and while it matches Wesker's cold nature from a lore perspective, it doesn't leave much room for counterplay. Despite this, let's get to the moment where I say the words from the thumbnail. I was wrong. Without a doubt, I was wrong. It was rash and short-sighted to suggest the outright removal of Wesker's infection ability. Yes, doing so would stunt his ability to tunnel very effectively. But it also removes passive slowdown, information gathering, and incentive to use the dash more liberally, which is fun for everybody. Without infection, Wesker is just a demogorgon that can't teleport, and nobody wants that, or at least nobody should want that. Thankfully, my viewers are legitimately clever and came up with good middle ground fixes that fall between leaving Wesker's power how it is and removing it outright. Simplest of these is just not to let the power build up during chase. This way, a survivor in the process of being tunneled doesn't have to worry about the 8% movement speed penalty kicking in during a chase. That penalty makes Wesker almost 25% faster than survivors, and frankly, it's brutal to face off against. It was also mentioned that getting hooked should reduce the infection rate back down to 0. While I think it would be too harsh to remove the infection rate just outright after a hook, like you're cleansed after being hooked, reducing the clock back to 0 is a great idea. This way, Wesker isn't punished for hooking an infected survivor, which is important, but that survivor is much better off after being hooked. I don't know if I'd be down for not letting infection progress during a chase and reducing it back to 0 after a hook, but I'd be okay with seeing how that plays out on a PTB. It may be too much of a nerf to do both of those, but doing one or the other would be amazing. And again, the PTB exists for a reason, so we can test these things out. I also read where some of them were saying that there should be a brief period after being unhooked that infection just doesn't progress at all. And again, I do tentatively agree with that. I would point out that I don't want all these changes at once, but some combination of them would be appreciated. Essentially, what we want to do here is we want to create a system where Wesker is encouraged to use his dash, where he is rewarded for using his dash, but survivors are not crushed for having that dash ability, right? Because again, as we mentioned in the previous video, it kind of stinks that you have to choose so much. Like you have to choose, okay, am I going to heal now or am I going to cleanse? I don't remember, the purify, disinfect, whatever they call it. Are you going to do that? Or, do I go work on a gen? Do I do whatever? Right now, it seems like the survivors are very much in a damned if they do, damned if they don't, if the Wesker tries to apply any pressure at all. So I like the thought of implementing some of these changes. Again, not all of them, but some of them, some combination of them. Either way, I do commend all who took my original idea and made it much healthier and more realistic. Removing infection entirely takes out a huge part of Wesker's kit, and it does that while also damaging him from a lore perspective. Also, as was pointed out, getting rid of infection would mean reworking 9 add-ons entirely, so there's basically no chance behavior would even do it for that reason alone. Basically, there's almost no chance that the devs remove the infection mechanic entirely, and after reading many comments, I don't think they should. Nerf it in some way to give recently unhooked survivors a better chance against tunneling, and I think we can call it a day. So, for a much needed TLDR, I was very wrong about removing Wesker's infection mechanic, though I still believe some minor changes are needed. Thank you to everyone who helped me form my opinion into something much better for the game. Your feedback is genuinely appreciated, and I'll try very hard not to make another boneheaded decision too soon. Now, if you will excuse me, I've got to get back to scripting my next video where I discuss the reasons why behavior should remove the pig's reverse bear traps and take away Victor's pounce ability. Until that one drops, I've been Das Food. Bye, friends.
I've been dreaming on in my head like I've seen it. A life worth living is a life with meaning. I'll do what I love till my heart stops beating. I'm feeding this demon. Got a taste, can't erase bitterness in my